Hi, my name is Rory and I'm here to speak with my fellow veteran English teachers today to talk about a helpful pedagogical practice called differentiated instruction. It's helpful, optimistic, and a really positive way to approach teaching. If you're like me, an experienced educator who endeavors to use proven teaching techniques to help students learn and grow, this series is for you. But first, let's talk about what differentiated instruction is. It's a mouthful, isn't it? It's an educational philosophy predicated on how students each learn differently. So in essence, you're adjusting the content, process, and product of a classroom to fit students' learning needs. Sounds familiar, right? When I first heard of differentiated instruction, I thought it was simply that question on screen. Maybe like a neat way to mix up the classroom, let students pick their own topics or assignments, do something fun and creative. Now, that can be part of what differentiated instruction is, and it can definitely be effective. But that isn't a philosophy. That idea is an action. Differentiated instruction is a way of thinking that leads to sustainable classrooms and learning outcomes. It was one of the big lessons I learned when I was starting out learning this, and call it the zeal of the newly converted, but before you implement anything from these videos, you've got to make sure that you understand that this is a philosophy, and all of this work stems from the belief that all of your students can grow and learn. So before we continue, I want you to think about your current students. Do you think they all have the ability to learn our subject? And I do mean everyone. Overachievers, the quiet kids, heck, even the troublemakers. I understand that some kids are almost impossible to work with, and it can be pretty hard to want to actually help them. But what if you thought all kids could learn? What if you thought that if they had the right support, work that interested them and motivated them, all of your students would try hard, behave themselves, and grow? Take a minute, pause the camera, and reflect on that question. What would your classroom look like if you thought all kids could learn? Welcome back. There are several aspects to differentiated instruction, but they're altogether useless if they're not stemming from a belief that all students can learn. Now, you've been around students long enough to know that when a teacher doesn't think students can handle work, they pick up on it. So with that belief, here are the 5 crucial categories of differentiated instruction, starting with environment, and then working our way into curriculum and assessment. Notice we haven't even gotten to instruction yet. We're setting up the roots, the core of our curriculum, classroom, and how we see how our students are doing. Then we focus on instruction, and finally we'll talk about managing students in the classroom. You know, I'll tell you, I'm targeting experienced English teachers because you're at the right intersection in your career. You're experienced enough to handle the classroom, but not so accustomed to curriculum that you'd rather not change it. You're really in the sweet spot. Also, there's really no uniform student. I know that it seems like that, but even in English class, not all students think the same way, though. You've got artistic students who are really creative. You've got that science kid who is taking this class because of tracking. They can't take any other English class and still take their math and science courses. You've got drama kids. Differentiated instruction will help you reach all of those students. And finally, I think that the content of an English class makes it an ideal venue for differentiated instruction. Heck, students can already submit projects in a variety of ways. When I taught Beowulf, I had my students submit projects from all types of disciplines. Papers, projects, heck, I had a puppet show. But even though that option seems to better address student interest, it can also address student readiness. I've had students who need to do something creative or concrete to feel comfortable really analyzing The Great Gatsby, particularly students who were struggling with the hard language. Conversely, I had students who loved reading the book, and they wanted to go beyond the text with something unorthodox yet challenging. And as we'll see through these videos, there are going to be plenty of times, whether it's a journal assignment or filling out pre-assessment, there will be plenty of times for you to really get information about your students to better adjust your lessons for them, whether they're having problems at home, what they really like, things like that. And it's for those reasons I think that differentiated instruction would be a great mode of thinking for the English classroom. Well, I'll tell you, also, as fascinated as I am with this pedagogical philosophy, I'm well aware that it's really hard to implement. I take this very seriously as a discipline, which is why I'm backing up everything I say about differentiated instruction with scientific research, particularly neuroscience and how the brain reacts to stress and challenge. We need to address those things before we can have effective learning outcomes for our students. I'll also discuss the limitations of short-term memory and rote memorization and how to design projects steering away from those pitfalls. And also, we'll talk about parts of the brain that activate when complex learning takes place, ultimately leading to the conclusion that information is processed better when placed in an appropriate, student-centered context. Ultimately, students need to feel comfortable to learn, which is our first topic, environment. Let's begin.